Did you hear about the moment the music stopped? Not on stage, but behind velvet ropes, when one of the most famous women on the planet was allegedly told she didn't belong? Picture this. Grammy night is over, the trophies are handed out. Cameras are powering down. But the real power moves? They're just beginning. The after parties. The invite-only rooms. The whispered conversations that never make it to air. And according to multiple accounts circulating in industry circles, one of those rooms turned ice cold the second Meghan Markle walked in. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let me ask you something right up front. How does someone go from global recognition, royal titles, and red carpets to being escorted out by security at Hollywood's most exclusive night? And why is no one officially denying it? Because this story isn't just about embarrassment, it's about access, power, and the unspoken rules of an industry that smiles for cameras and punishes quietly after midnight. Sources close to the Grammys after-party scene say the tension didn't explode instantly. It simmered. At first, everything looked normal. Glamour, champagne, familiar faces laughing a little too loudly. But behind those smiles, something was off. Whispers began. Side glances followed. And then, the kind of silence you feel before something goes wrong. Here's what makes this moment hit harder. This wasn't a public venue. This wasn't a fan event. Grammy after-parties are curated spaces. Every name is vetted. Every guest is approved. Every presence is calculated. So when reports suggest someone arrived who allegedly wasn't expected or wanted, it sends a very specific message. And that message isn't about security protocols, it's about permission. Why does this matter now? Because Hollywood has changed. Fame alone doesn't guarantee entry anymore. Influence does. Favor does. And those currencies can disappear quietly without press releases or dramatic fallouts. One year you're on the list. The next year, your name sparks discomfort. Think about it. If this were a misunderstanding, wouldn't someone rush to clear it up? If this were a mistake, wouldn't insiders scramble to soften the narrative? Instead, what we're seeing is silence. No official statements, no glowing post-party photos, no friendly leaks correcting the record. Silence in Hollywood is rarely accidental. What's especially striking is the timing. The 2026 Grammys were already tense. Industry insiders describe a night heavy with hierarchy, reputational recalculations, and invisible lines being drawn. It's not about talent alone anymore. It's about optics, about who helps the brand and who complicates it. And that's where this story takes a darker turn, because according to those same accounts, the situation didn't escalate publicly. There was no shouting, no dramatic scene. Just a quiet intervention, a private word, and then security stepping into a role they only play when a decision has already been made at a higher level. Ask yourself this: when security approaches you at an elite event, is it really their choice, or are they carrying out someone else's verdict? This is where the humiliation cuts deepest, not because it was loud, but because it was discreet, controlled, surgical, the kind of removal that leaves no footage, but leaves a lasting scar. And as uncomfortable as this moment sounds, it's only the beginning. They say the most exclusive rooms in Hollywood don't announce themselves. You don't see signs, you don't hear instructions. You just know whether you belong the moment you step inside. And according to people familiar with the 2026 Grammy after-party circuit, that recognition didn't happen this time. Let's rewind for a moment. Because to understand why this alleged incident hit such a nerve, you have to understand how these parties really work. Not the Instagram version, not the red carpet fantasy. The reality. Grammy after-parties are not celebrations. They're power hubs. Deals get floated. Alliances get tested. Reputations are quietly assessed over cocktails that cost more than most people's rent. Every name on the guest list is there for a reason. Sometimes that reason is talent. Sometimes it's influence. Sometimes it's who you're sitting next to. And sometimes it's about who organizers want seen with whom, and who they don't. According to industry chatter, the party in question wasn't one of the open access events where celebrities drift in and out. This was a tightly controlled space, limited entry, hand-checked lists, a room designed to feel effortless while being anything but. So when word spread that Meghan Markle had arrived, reactions reportedly weren't celebratory. They were cautious. Here's the uncomfortable part. Multiple sources claim the tension wasn't immediate. At first, there were polite smiles, a few nods, the kind of surface-level courtesy Hollywood excels at. But beneath that, confusion, then concern, then quiet movement behind the scenes. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the temperature drop, even though no one said a word? That's the feeling insiders describe. Whispers allegedly began circulating fast. Was she invited? Who approved this? Did someone override the list? And perhaps most telling of all, who would take responsibility if this became a problem? Because in rooms like these, responsibility is everything. Here's the contradiction that makes this story fascinating. Publicly, fame suggests access. Privately, access is conditional. And according to accounts from that night, the conditions had changed. Some attendees allegedly avoided eye contact. Others suddenly found reasons to move to different sections of the venue. Conversations shifted. The energy fractured. Not dramatically. Quietly. And that quiet is where Hollywood delivers its sharpest messages. Ask yourself this. If someone truly belongs, does their presence cause that much recalibration? Sources claim organizers began discreet checks almost immediately, not dramatic confrontations. Just subtle confirmations, names cross-referenced, texts sent, decisions escalated upward. Because no one at ground level wants to make the wrong call, especially not with someone that recognizable. And this is where the story stops being about one person and starts being about the system. Hollywood doesn't exile people publicly anymore. It doesn't need to. It creates discomfort. It makes staying feel impossible. According to those familiar with the situation, that's exactly what happened next. The room didn't erupt. It froze. And when a room like that freezes, it's because a verdict is forming. Now, here's a question worth sitting with. If someone arrives at a space and the dominant reaction isn't excitement or curiosity, but risk assessment, what does that say about their standing? Because this wasn't a misunderstanding that cleared itself up, no friendly host stepped forward. No insider publicly vouched. No one rushed to smooth things over. Instead, the machinery of exclusivity quietly activated. And once that machinery starts moving, there's only one possible outcome. Because when organizers stop asking whether you should be there and start asking how to remove you without a scene, the decision has already been made. And that's when security enters the picture. Here's a hard truth about elite events that most people never see. By the time security approaches you, the conversation is already finished. Security doesn't debate. They don't negotiate. They execute decisions made somewhere far above the dance floor. And according to multiple accounts tied to that Grammy after-party, the moment security shifted from watching to walking was the moment everything became irreversible. Think about how that moment unfolds. No shouting, no announcements, just a quiet approach, a polite but firm posture. A request framed as assistance, not accusation. The kind of interaction designed to minimize attention while maximizing compliance. Because in rooms like this, embarrassment isn't created by noise. It's created by implication. Sources describe security moving with precision, not rushed. Not aggressive, calm, professional. The message was clear without ever being spoken aloud. This wasn't about safety. This wasn't about confusion. This was about removal. And here's where the emotional weight of the story lands. Imagine standing in a room filled with people you recognize, faces you've seen on magazine covers, executives who control access to the next opportunity, and suddenly realizing no one is stepping in. No one is asking questions. No one is offering to smooth things over. Have you ever noticed how fast power evaporates when silence replaces support? According to those present, the removal wasn't dramatic. That's what made it devastating. A brief exchange. A subtle redirection toward the exit, the kind of moment that passes unnoticed by outsiders but is instantly understood by insiders. Hollywood reads body language fluently, and when security escorts someone out, the message travels faster than any press release ever could. What's striking is what didn't happen. There were no raised voices, no viral footage, no phones pulled out to capture the moment. And that absence wasn't accidental. Elite spaces enforce discretion the same way they enforce access. Quietly. Completely, that discretion, ironically, makes the humiliation deeper. Because humiliation without witnesses still leaves a mark, and humiliation without defenders leaves a scar. According to accounts circulating afterward, the reaction inside the room was immediate but muted. Conversations stalled. Glances followed the direction of the exit. Then, almost instantly, the room recalibrated. Music resumed. Laughter returned. As if the moment had already been mentally filed away. Ask yourself this: if someone truly mattered in that space, would the party resume so easily? This is where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Public narratives frame certain figures as untouchable. Privately, those narratives are constantly being renegotiated, and sometimes renegotiation looks like a polite escort toward the door. Some insiders reportedly describe the moment as a signal, not just to the person being removed, but to everyone watching. A reminder of who controls the velvet rope, of how quickly relevance can be questioned, of how fragile access really is. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. Security doesn't act unless organizers authorize it. Organizers don't authorize it unless they feel protected. And protection only exists when the room agrees. So when no one objected, no one intervened, and no one followed, it suggested something chilling: consensus. Now let's talk about aftermath. Because the real damage didn't occur at the door. It happened in the minutes that followed. According to sources, names began circulating. Texts went out, quiet confirmations were exchanged. Not about what happened, but about what it meant. Because being removed from a space like that isn't just a social slight, it's an industry verdict. One delivered without explanation and without appeal. And once that verdict starts spreading, it changes how future invitations are handled. How calls are returned, how rooms respond the next time your name appears on a list. This wasn't just a bad night, it was a message. But the most devastating part of this story isn't the escort. It's what allegedly followed afterward. The silence, the distancing, the sudden chill that extended far beyond one party. Because when doors close quietly, they tend to stay that way. So let's go back to the question we opened with. How does someone go from global recognition and near constant visibility to being quietly escorted out of one of Hollywood's most protected rooms? The uncomfortable answer is this: Hollywood doesn't humiliate loudly anymore. It withdraws. Because the real shock of this story isn't the alleged moment security stepped in. It's what didn't happen afterward. No public outrage. No visible defense. No friendly insider rushing to clarify the narrative. Just distance. Space. Silence. And silence in this industry is never neutral. Think about how power used to work. When someone fell out of favor, it was dramatic. Feuds. Headlines. Public statements. Now, power dissolves in private. Invitations dry up, names stop circulating. The phone stops ringing, not all at once, but just enough that you start to notice. That's why this alleged Grammys after-party moment matters far beyond one night. Because if reports are accurate, this wasn't about a misunderstanding at the door. It was about recalibration, about the industry quietly reassessing risk, optics, and value. And when that happens, it doesn't announce itself. It simply moves on. Here's the irony that's hard to ignore. Publicly, Meghan Markle remains one of the most recognizable figures in the world. Her name still generates clicks, still sparks debate, still dominates conversation. But recognition and acceptance are not the same currency. Hollywood will use your visibility long after it stops offering you protection. Ask yourself this: if this incident were insignificant, would it still be whispered about weeks later? If it meant nothing, would so many insiders be careful with their words instead of dismissing it outright? Because the stories that stick are rarely the loud ones. They're the ones everyone quietly agrees not to challenge. What's especially telling is how fast the narrative shifted. Not toward sympathy, not toward clarification, but toward avoidance. The kind of avoidance that suggests the room had already made up its mind. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. In Hollywood, you don't lose status when people criticize you, you lose it when they stop reacting at all. When your presence creates discomfort instead of excitement. When your arrival sparks calculations instead of curiosity. That's what makes this moment feel final. Not because it was cruel. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was efficient. One quiet escort, one closed door, and an entire ecosystem adjusting accordingly. So here's the reflection I want to leave you with. Is public humiliation louder when no one films it? Or is it louder when everyone sees it and chooses not to respond? Because in an industry built on image, silence is the most powerful message of all. And if this story proves anything, it's this. In Hollywood, applause fades quickly. Invitations last only as long as you're useful, but exclusion? That lingers. If you think this moment signals a deeper shift in how power works behind closed doors, let me know in the comments. If you believe Hollywood has become colder, quieter, and far more strategic about who it embraces, hit like. And if you want to follow what happens next, because moments like this rarely end in isolation, Subscribe.